Hello everybody, hey, thank you for tuning in, welcome back to the channel. Anyone who's new around here, hey 4strings, seeing your comment in the chat. 4strings was messaging me or commented earlier about missing the last Q&A, but he's here and that's the most important thing. So in this Q&A, I want to get straight into it. I'm going to answer the questions from last week. So last week, 2 weeks ago. So any of the questions that were left on the previous Q&A video, I'm going to dive into those first. And if you're here watching, comment away in the chat and give me any more questions you want me to answer, and I will get straight into it and get those questions answered too. I'm going to do this for about half an hour. So about half an hour, I'm going to go through these questions as quickly as possible, but going with as much detail as we need to. So sorry, I'm a bit tired tonight. So if it all comes out a bit weird, it's because I'm really tired. So let's just get into it here. I've got all sorts of things set up. So I think I've got screen sharing set up. So last time I was kind of, not delving into this stuff, but today I'm going to try and do it. So here we go. And there we go. Here, I think you can see are the comments from last week. So all up in this little box here. And you should be able to see my cursor here. So I'm going to start with this first question from Rick, who I know tunes in pretty regularly. And Rick asked, Tyler, what's the best 200 watt bass amp for small gigs? Also, do you recommend practicing with a drum machine? That first part of the question is a difficult question to answer in my view, and I probably need a bit more detail. But I'm going to give some broad thoughts on this. I wouldn't worry about the wattage too much. That would be my first thing. I'd worry much more about the speaker than the wattage. So if I was going to do a small gig, typically I'm going to say that's between, say, 30 to 100 people, maybe restaurants, something like that. And I would say be looking for a 1x12 speaker with probably maybe 300 watts behind it, 200 to 300 watts. But my priority would be the speaker rather than the wattage. If I needed more volume, I'd bring two speakers, a 2x10 maybe, or two 1x12s. As you might be able to see behind me, there we go. The Aguilar's there. That 212 combination is one of my favourites, just because it's modular. In that kind of category, if it was a combo amp, alternatively, I'd probably look at something like the Fender Rumble if you're on a lower budget. But if you just had whatever budget, no limit, I'd probably go for something like the Mesa Boogie Walkabout Scout 1x12. I think they're really cool, and about 300 watts. So not sure about the 200 watt limit, but if it had to be a 200 watt bass amp for small gigs, probably also something portable, so maybe like a TC Electronic? No. I do like TC Electronic BG250. I used to use that a lot for small gigs. That was really cool and useful. But I'd probably go for something more like, I'd look at maybe a Trace Idea Elf or something like that. So that would be my thoughts for 200 watt bass and small amp rig setups. And do I recommend practice with a drum machine? Yes, definitely practice with a drum machine is cool. I think practicing with a click is even better than practicing with a drum machine, because effectively the drum machine, you never know what situation you're going to be in. You could be in a situation where you only have click, you don't have proper drums, and with drums you're really getting all those gaps filled in. So if you think about the bar and each beat, you're subdividing it, and the drums are subdividing that beat. So having just a click on 1, 2, 3 and 4 is going to really solidify your own timekeeping and allow you to think about the subdivisions within that. So you have 1, E and before you get to 2, and you've got to be in control of all those subdivisions. So if you're playing eighth notes, that would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, which sometimes a drum machine will be doing that for you. So you've got like the hi-hat is going da 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 with the kick and the snare on the 1 and the 2 and the 3 and then the 4. So I do recommend practicing with something to keep time, because it's really good for you to internalize that clock and to feel what it's like with a drum machine, playing with a drummer and those subdivisions being divided for you. But I also would say it's good to practice with just a click and to be able to divide them yourself, so that you can feel the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and the 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. So do it is good for you, but also be able to do it to click and be able to do it without as well and be solid with your timing. Can I review the Fender American Ultra Jazz bass from Jordan Andrew? I will definitely try and get hold of those basses because they are really popular and going to be even more popular, but I will definitely keep hold of that idea and try and do so. Rome 8180. Oh, hey Catman. Hey Catman. Just seen that in the comments. Hello. Thank you for tuning in again. And I think one of your comments is about to come up in a minute as well. Oh, there it is. Just you there from last week saying really good live stream. So thank you, my man. Thank you for tuning in again. What's your most desired piece of gear that you don't have from Rome 8180? This is going to be studio stuff. I actually think, if I'm honest, I have everything bass-wise that I really need and want. I love the Equalizer rig behind me. That kind of has amps taken care of. What would I have? Okay, I can think of a few things, but they're all kind of studio related. So an Ampeg B15, a real one, that would be on the list of things that would be awesome to own. Studio work pretty much, and I just know they sound really good. Whenever I played through one, I've always thought that sounds like proper classic bass tone. The TubeTech CL1B compressor, which is kind of a combination of like an 1176 compressor and an LA2A compressor. So it has the opto circuit from an LA2A to give it a little more of a slow, cushiony release. But you can also tweak that yourself with the attack and release knobs. So I think that's a really cool piece of gear. And another compressor actually would be the Distressor. I'd like one of those too. Similar reason, really versatile compression that's really high quality and gives some analog goodness to it. And outside of that, probably a Neve preamp of some sort would be cool too. So yeah, that's kind of my top 4 things that I would like for a studio rig and my most desired piece of gear. Sorry, the cat just decided to attack the chair. He'll be up in a minute, I imagine. Here we go, Mark Green's question from last week, which I thought was really cool and is why I chose to make it one of the main title parts of this video. Do you think it's important for a new starter to learn on a 4-string before getting a 5? I'll answer that part first. Do I think it's important to learn on a 4-string first? There we go, there's a ratio. I said he'd be up. Oh, that's not cool. You just covered everybody up. Do I think it's important to start on a 4-string before a 5? I think a 4-string is cool to start with because it gives you a basis and a foundation. I think starting with a 5 is totally doable and I don't think there's a problem. One of the people I grew up with who was a little bit older than me, but when I was doing my first Battle of the Bands and things like that, he started and played a 5-string bass. And he had no problem with it, but then he said he found it a struggle to go back to a 4. And I think you're better off starting on a 4 and then working your way up, because you're kind of limiting yourself if you start on a 5 and then you become comfortable on a 5 but you're not ever comfortable on a 4, because the majority of basses on the planet are 4-string basses. So being able to play a 4, you can then progress and move on, but you can pretty much play any bass out there. I think starting on a 4, you get the foundations right and are able to technically get hold of the instrument more easily without worrying about deadening the 5th string and all that sort of thing. And I think just having fewer strings makes it easier to start with, and then you can move on to more strings, and I've been up to 6 and I kind of came back to 5, and between 4 and 5 is where I'm most comfortable really. At the end of the day, the extra notes you actually get, there's only 5 more than you would have on a 4-string bass either way. On a 6 you get 5 more up, and on a 5 you get them down. So it's really a matter of preference. I'd recommend that everyone start on a 4 and then move to 5, 6 and so on. Next part of this question: are there any important do's and don'ts in choosing your first amp, e.g. is it worth spending the extra for a head and cab over getting a combo? I think the biggest do is to make sure that your speaker is good. I'd suggest getting at least a 10-inch speaker, probably a 12 if you can, and to spend more on the cabinet than you do on the head if you're splitting them, because the speaker is more important than the head really. The head is always just going to be able to make something sound decent and make it louder. The speaker is what has to produce that great quality sound. So if you can, spend more on the cab or get something that's equivalent rated to each other. Any benefits to getting head and cab over a combo? It's more versatile and modular, so you can carry it around more easily probably. But I would probably just get a combo with an speaker extension, because that's also equally as useful and maybe more useful because you just have one box to carry rather than, say, a bag for your head and then a speaker cabinet and everything. So my preference and thoughts would be make sure that the speaker's really good. Make sure that it's got a decent wattage, probably over 100 watts. 200 to 300 watts is preferable, because it just makes it easy on you and you don't have to worry about turning it up and not having enough headroom and anything like that. And make sure that it's light, portable, carryable, and really is the tone that you want as well. Try it and make sure it sounds like you want to sound in the first place. And you just like it and enjoy it and you want to use it. That's probably the most important thing. Things not to do is to probably choose something that's desperately heavy that you can't move and don't want to move, because that's pretty upsetting and annoying. Don't choose things that are really old, because it's likely they're going to need a lot of servicing and a lot of maintenance, and it's just difficult when it comes to that, and then getting old parts and so on. But yeah, I think that's kind of it for my do's and don'ts. I would suggest that you check out my Truth About Buying an Amp video, which I put out late last year or early this year, a couple of months ago. So go and have a look at that, check that out, and that should hopefully give you all the answers you possibly need. I can see more comments coming up on the stream, so thank you for those. Thank you for everybody for tuning in and chatting and leaving things there. I will definitely get to those. Thanks, Mark. Okay, next question here from Adrian. I think you said in the past that you play in a country band. How did you get into it? How do you find the opportunities and scene in the UK? I did, and I do, and I generally play with a lot of artists or work with artists in that realm. I just really like country music. It's kind of pop music with guitars much of the time, and then some of that more old school, slightly rootsy thing, which I also really like. I like the simplicity and the fact that it's about the song more than all the other stuff. I spent years studying jazz, and I've also always loved songs and loved bass players that played for the songs, Lee Sklar, Nathan East, those kind of people. So country music was kind of like the best combination of those. I could focus on songs and I could play awesome bass lines, and there's space for the bass to do things in that kind of music. So that's why I like country stuff. I've played in a band with an artist for 2 years up until this year, and we went toward Italy and Germany and did a couple of shows in America, and played stuff here. There are a few festivals here, which is cool, and I enjoy playing those. It's really cool that the UK scene is kind of a community because it's really small, not many people doing it. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. I wish there were more. I wish there were more opportunities, more people. The scene was bigger and better, but I'm kind of always working towards that, and part of doing that I talk to the BCMA every Saturday evening and do part of their British Country Music Association socials and chat and talk about all sorts of things country in the UK and try and set the UK country scene to rights. But yeah, I really enjoy the music, and I just made it my effort to find people that played that kind of music and played the kind of stuff I enjoyed. I think nowadays I'm producing more of it and songwriting and doing more of the studio side of it than the live gigging, and I probably will continue to do that, as that's really what I enjoy more. I enjoy the creative side of it and playing on the tracks and playing different parts and producing and arranging and all that stuff. So I'm always looking for more people to do it, but it's a small scene that unfortunately I wish was bigger, but it will come with time. So hopefully that kind of answers that question in general. I think that's it for the questions from here. Okay, I'm just going to dive out of this 1 second. Just go back to full screen for a second while I dive back to a couple of other questions that I know I was asked. Thank you to everyone who's leaving comments. I will get to those in just a second in the chat. If you're watching this after the fact, please put your comments in the comments below, and I will answer them. Your questions, I will answer them in the coming videos, coming weeks. Also, I said in the last Q&A that I do this as a recorded episode, but I actually really enjoy doing it and chatting to you guys. So that's why I decided to come and do it and make it a live stream again. Sorry, I'm really bad, I've discovered just now, at talking and finding what I need, because it's pretty crazy. I've got multiple screens going on in here, trying to find the things that I want. Going to posts, because I know that I've left a couple of comments on posts, so I'm going to go to those first. And then I can see Stu Goodman, I was going to get to your question anyway, so I will do that in just a second. And okay, here we go. I'll just share screen one more time. Found this one question from Scott Pulver. There we go. I don't know if you guys can even see that, can you? Hopefully. Do you think Fender Rumble combo amps are a good start for beginners like the Rumble 100, or is there something better for $300-ish? To be honest, I think it probably is a really fail-safe way to go with that Rumble stuff. I would say if you can, to upgrade a little bit to get the 200, or if you can even better than that, get the 500, because I feel like those two are really proper gigging amps at that point. The Rumble 100, I feel like you could do a few rehearsals and practice things if it wasn't too loud, but you're at home, that's kind of a good amp for that situation. But if you can, upgrade to the 200 or the 500. I can't think of much better really. The Fender Rumble stuff has the Jens Benz DNA in it, of being super light, really good power sections and great sounding amps. I love the sound of Fender bass amps. So that would be my advice on that really. I can't think of much off the top of my head that's significantly better or a better all-rounder than that Fender stuff. And I've enjoyed the Fender stuff that I've played. Okie doke. So those are the questions from last week. Hopefully that's kind of helped everybody out. I'm going to turn screen sharing off. I'm going to move this back in front of me so I don't look like I'm looking away all the time. And get to your questions so I can see them. Hey guys, right, there we go. Martin Rios. Hey Martin, you definitely tuned in last time. Thank you for tuning in again. Here we go. Here is the question. I've realised that I had this access to this all last time and never used it, so I'm learning. Bear with me. Have I used a Kali 76 bass compressor? How would you set up a compressor to get a vintage fat bass tone? The answer to that question is yes, I have, because I have a Kali 76 compressor. Where is it? It's here. I have this one, and I also have this one. So as you can tell, I quite like the Kali 76 as a compressor. I love 1176 style compressors on bass. I think sound really good. And this also kind of leads into Stu's question, so maybe we can combine the two here. So yes, I have it. I love these compressors. I really like this TX, particularly for recording. Don't know if you can see, but this is the old original version, which I don't think they make anymore, which had, you see this gain switch here? That's because it's got, the TX stands for transformer, so it's got a transformer in it, and you can change the level of gain on the compressor, and that gives it a bit more of saturation, a little bit of dirt really, a bit more colour, and I think this sounds really cool when it's colouring up your tone, and it just adds something by being in the chain, to be honest, just running the signal through the transformer. And this guy does all the same kind of sounds, just without that little bit of saturation and character. But of course with this one you also have the dry blend, so you can have parallel compression. So vintage fat bass tones really depends on what you're doing. I generally find to get kind of a more vintagey tone, I'd be setting, I use this one because it's obvious and you can see what's going on. I would set the ratio kind of around a 4, maybe to 6-ish. I would then be on 1176, the knobs are always kind of a bit backwards. So this attack here will clamp down on your attack straight away and not let any of the transient through. And this release will just let go of that straight away. And how I have it set is actually more like this kind of thing, this kind of here. and then the release a little bit slower as well. And this allows the transient to come through, so you get the punch of the initial note. But then this release knob here is going to just hold on to that. And I think for that kind of vintage fat stuff, you're probably not going to be playing super busily. So it's all about the release. With these 1176 style compressors, it's all about the release time. So setting it slower is going to allow the note to kind of sustain and pump a little bit more. And that's going to give you that old school tubey saturation, old school style compression that's going to fatten it up. The thing about that though is that you need to be kind of making sure that the amount that you are reducing the gain is going back between each of the notes, because otherwise you're losing the attack of the next note. So this is kind of getting into a big compression thing. Don't want to go into too much detail, but you want to set the input so that you're getting maybe minus 3 dB, maybe minus 5 at the most if you want really fat vintage style. But you want to make sure that this meter is emptying every time before each note. And that's going to get you fat vintage tone that boosts and sustains using the release knob, but also allows each note to come through. So hopefully that's a quick little run through of that. If you want me to do more detail on that, let me know in the comments or in the chat, or just let me know, and I will maybe do a whole video on that, because I think compression is really mystical until you really delve into it, and then you can get loads of cool stuff and different sounds out of it. I love compression, I love compressors, they're really cool, and they do so much to change your tone that is unreal. So hopefully that answers that question, and I can hide that. Yes, I'm learning, it's good. Catman, hey, here we go, let's show it rather than just read it out. Do you think the Fender Rumble 40 amp is something to look into if you live in an apartment? I don't really know if that matters too much. I used to live in an apartment with barefaced cabs, a 10 and a 12, and I used to use those and just focus on the volume knob, to be honest. Was all about turning it down. I think, to be honest, all of those bass amps that are low wattage and small speakers, I kind of generally stay away from. I'd rather personally wear headphones or play through studio monitors, or just any of those options, rather than to use a smaller amp, because I feel like you spend a lot of money on something that's quite small that you can't then really go and gig with. You can't extend with more speakers if you needed to. I think it limits you a little bit. So personally, in general, I would stay away from any of those cheaper amps and look at something like the Fender Rumble 200 if you can, and just turn it down. And bass is the thing. When you live in an apartment, it's always the bass that goes through walls and everything. So just keep the bass a little bit lower than you might want to, because that's what people are going to hear. That travels through walls, through everything. Hello. Okay, 3020 Alex A. Hi Tyler, any recommendations on headphone amps like Fox Amplug? I've got to be honest, no, not really. I've seen Fender's new headphone amp. That looks pretty cool. I definitely have check that out. I personally don't use headphone amps. I am a big fan of audio interfaces for audio work anyway, so I use them all the time. And my personal preference is either to use the HX Stomp with an iPad, and just to plug the bass into the HX Stomp and wear headphones, and play things back through the USB into the Stomp, or a product like the iRig. I use that with the iPad 2. Have I got that with me? No, I thought I had it on a shelf, but I don't. The iRig, which is literally just like a headphone amp, not headphone amp, but it's a headphone cable, and then you have a place to plug your jack into it, and you plug your headphones into the other hole on this little adapter. It's all passive, you don't need any power, and then you just plug it into your phone, and it just works like a headphone amp, really. That means you can play things back through it. You can play to a click. You can put that on from your iPad, from your phone, as long as you've got a headphone jack on one of those devices. And then personally, that's my preferred way to do it, is to use something like that rather than a headphone amp like the Amplug that you just plug straight into your bass, because I typically don't find that I want to just play bass on its own. I want to have a track to play to, or a click to play to, or some chord changes from something like iReal Pro, just something else there with me to make it a bit more fun. So that would be my take on it. I think the iRig, the really basic original one, is something like £20, so $20, something like that. I'd maybe look at one of those if you can, especially because it's passive and just runs on your phone. Okay, hope that helps. Stu, yeah, back to Stu and back to compression and back to all that stuff a little bit. I might overrun this one a little bit because the questions come in and getting juicy and good. Enjoying the comments. Keep doing that. Hit the like button as well if you haven't already, because that really helps this video get out to more people. And if you have more questions that you want to ask, leave them in the chat now or leave them in the comments for this video once it's finished and processed and all that stuff on YouTube. You can rewatch it. So yeah, Stu, I've been thinking about this question a lot. Hi Tyler, any thoughts on what to put in front of a digital interface to create a warmer tone? I'm using a Sadowski MV5 grey bass into a PreSonus i2, looking at a valve preamp like Mark Bass Vintage Pre. Good question, and something that I do a lot of at the minute. Lots of recording, lots of producing. So something that I'm always thinking about. For me, I actually don't go for much colour when I'm recording bass, but I do want fatness and thickness, and I find that comes from, as I mentioned a minute ago, using this with a transformer. I think the best thing you can do when you're recording bass is to really put as many transformers and Class A circuitry in front of it as possible. So I use this guy. He's got a line in, line out, DI out. And the TX, the transformer in it, really helps saturate it a bit, and that's what you're after really, is the saturation and the colour of that. Rather than valves, I actually don't think valves necessarily always help, and things in valve preamps don't always necessarily help either. The other thing I'm always using when I record is, 1 second, well, so many boxes I'm showing you all today. This guy, Avalon U5. Which I really like. This is kind of my recorded bass sound. It's really, it's kind of a bit edgy. It's kind of a bit surgical in the way that it sounds, but it just fattens the bass end up a lot. A lot of people have mentioned that I always get quite a fat bottom end on some of the review videos that I did early on. I don't use this anymore. I probably should. But on those videos I was using this, and the clarity of the low end on this is really, really fat. And just kind of translate naturally all the way up through the spectrum. So I use one of these, and then the Cali, and then I use one other thing as well, hang on. And that's this, which is also plugged in, so this is a bit dangerous. There we go, unplug that. This guy, which is the Warm Audio WA12 preamp. And again, transformers. I think for recording, the most important thing you can do is get a transformer in the chain, and give it a bit of gain and a bit of saturation, and that's what I find makes a really good recorded bass tone. So typically I would run the Cali 76 into the front of the Avalon, and then from the Avalon out of the mic output, it would then go into the back of this Warm Audio as a preamp. So I've got the Cali giving compression and a bit of colour with the transformer. I then have the Avalon giving me a nice fat sound that is very defined, clear, accurate, and really levels the signal nicely. Not like a compressor levels it, but it just a DI is going to change the level from instrument to line or mic level, so it does that change in level. And then this mic pre here to give a bit more warmth in the mid-range and a bit more aggression in the mid-range and colour in that way. It's also got the tone knob here. So this is styled on an API style mic preamp, which is renowned for its more aggressive mid-range, and I find that balances out nicely with the Avalon, which is quite wide and fat. Then you get a little bit of a push in the mid-range from the Warm. But if you're not wanting to buy lots of boxes of gear, because that's all quite expensive, that's probably about £1,000 between all of them, I would just suggest doing it in your software. So the B15 plugins that you can get, Logic's got one built in, same with the SVT. Logic have got those built in, UAD has got them built in. That's going to give you a nice warm sound, and you compare that. I would mult the track, which is where you duplicate it, so maybe record your clear bass line in and then just multi to stack it. So if you are on Logic, you'd press Alt and then click and drag it down to the next track, and that would give you two of them, and I'd put an amp sim on one and leave the other one clean. But there's lots of options. I would suggest that you can do it in software, so using the amp sims, or also preamp emulations. So you can get in Logic. I know that there's the different console styles of EQ, and those are mic preamps. So if you go to console EQ, you can use those. But you can do the same on Pro Tools, same on any of the DAWs really. But that would be my suggestion, would be to do it afterwards. I think naturally we always want to get the greatest tone we can going straight in, but a great clear clean tone can always be warmed up after the fact. So something to consider. And I also think I saw it earlier, but Plugin Alliance are doing their Ampeg amps in, which is really good, for free at the minute. Go on their Instagram and have a look, because I think that's there. I think the code is Ampeg-4free, Ampeg-4-free at checkout. But that SVT VR plugin is really good. That sounds really cool. Blend that with the DI, and I think you'll have everything you need. So that was quite a long answer to that question. Sorry, but I'm really into that kind of stuff. Harry Curley. Hi Tyler, I'm considering between a Player Series or a Vintera 60s jazz bass. Not sure which to go for. I'm an active musician, so I'm used to playing lots of different styles. Any help would be great. I personally like the Vintera. I do like the Vintera basses, but if you want a bass that kind of covers everything, the Player Series is hard to miss, because it just sounds like a classic version of that. Well, it sounds like a modern classic version of that bass. The Player Series P, you play it and it just sounds like a great P bass. Not particularly vintage, not particularly modern, but you know it can go either way. Same with the jazz bass. The thing really is, how much does it matter? Does it really matter in context? Possibly not. I would suggest really that you go for the one with the neck profile that suits you the most and that you would like the most and want to play the most. I think the 60s ones, I like the neck profile, and I also like the slightly warmer sound of those pickups in general. So that's what I'd probably go for. But you're making a good saving on the Player Series. That's a really tough question. I can see why you've kind of asked it. Difficult one. They'll both do the job ultimately, and it just depends how much that little bit more vintage sound will matter to you, and the difference in price. I'd probably, if you're worried about price, I'd probably just stick with the Player. It's going to be a great bass, slightly more modern features. Probably go with the Player, I think, unless you specifically love the colour of the Vintera or you love the neck. More comments. Thank you for all the comments, everybody. Thanks for being lovely as usual. Do I like octave pedals? Oh, sorry, I should probably put it up. Do I like octave pedals like the Boss OC2? Yes, I do. They are probably, after compressors, my favourite type of pedal. That's really lame, isn't it? I like compressors the most. That's really sad, but I do. I love the Boss OC2, really cool pedal. I also had the MXR, is it M288? I think I had that pedal and used that a lot. That was my first octave pedal. I've got more. I've got a Pog, I think. This is bad. I don't even know what pedals I've got. This is really bad. But I do love octave pedals. I think they're really cool. I love the fact you can do the synthy thing with them, play them up the neck, and then get that fat octave down. That's really cool. And yeah, I just love octave pedals. I use them all the time. I used to use them all the time. When I did more jazzy stuff, jazz fusion stuff, I was using them all the time. Nowadays, I rarely use them. So that's why I probably can't remember what I've got. And they're not here with me. They're being stored elsewhere. But yeah, I do love an octave pedal. Can't go wrong with one of them. Thanks, Martin. I will definitely do more in-depth on compression. I think it's really difficult to get it across sometimes until you start doing it yourself and turning the knobs and really listening. But I do it all the time now in the studio, producing everything, so you get used to it. Here we go. I'm going to stop. So all the questions that are here now, I'm going to stop after these, because otherwise I will be here forever, because I just enjoy answering and chatting with you guys. Here we go. Saved by His Grace. I started with a 4-string fretless, but I'm considering getting a 5-string. I just started in May of last year. I love my fretless, but would it be pointless to get a 5-string fretless? Cool question. I also started on a fretless, interestingly. I stole it from my dad, who may or may not be watching right now. But yeah, not literally stole it, but I just borrowed it for a long time. Is your fretless lined? That's an important question because that makes a big difference. Mine was lined. And really, it was cool. I think if you start with a lined fretless, it's a cool way to go. Anyway, I'm digressing and just talking about me now. Considering getting a 5-string, I wouldn't personally. It's not lined. Okay, that is a tough ask. First thing, well done. That's a brave choice to make, not getting it lined, because that's a tough gig. I don't think I would have even. I had a lined fretless for a short period of time. I played double bass, but playing double bass and playing lined fretless is a very different ball game, and playing unlined fretless is really tough. So kudos to you for doing that and sticking with it, because I couldn't do it, and that was when I could already play. I would say for being able to approach almost any gig, I would go with a fretted bass, and I'd get a fretted 5-string. It's Tony Franklin one. That's really cool as well. The Tony Franklin bass is really cool. I love the fact that it's the only Fender PJ, right? They are really cool basses. I take it that's the one in your profile picture. Yeah, I would go with a fretted 5-string because it gives you the versatility at a gig to do more traditional styles, do slap style, things like that, and just do classic gigs on that. And then you've got your fretless for your own stuff, that genre of playing fretless and that style. So yeah, I'd go with a fretted 5 personally, and a fretted 5 is just a real workhorse for anything. And then you've got the best of both worlds. You have your fretless, you have your fretted 5. I actually do have a fretless 5-string, but it's lined. And the only reason I got it fretless was because I stumbled across it and wasn't actually intending to buy it. And also having the top string, I wanted to try that fretless and string it from E to C, which I actually really didn't like. And it's still got the C on it. I'll grab it now. Here's my 5-string fretless bass, which is my Sandberg. It's the old Fender Jazz style, but I strung it up here with the high C, which to be honest doesn't sound great fretless. But yeah, that's the only reason. I happened to find it and thought it was cool, but I never really had a need to play a fretted low B or a fretted high C string. So stick with a fretted 5-string. Bringing out all the props today. Cool. Oh yeah, thanks for the cat. Yeah, the cat is, bless him, he's called Horatio. He's up there on the amp. He loves hanging out on Aguilar amps. They're his personal favourite choice of amp, it would seem. And he's cute. Bless him. He had to have his hair shaved because he hates being brushed, and doesn't. And he is a Persian cat, so his hair is super long, so it gets a bit out of hand. Considering the Ampeg, I was considering the Cali 76, but might go for the Ampeg compressor. Very different, completely different styles of compression. So this is becoming the compressor Q&A. 1176 compressors have the attack and release. And you can set them and you kind of determine where they're going to kick in and kick out. With something like the Ampeg, it's opto, so it reacts to your playing and then stops when it thinks it's right. Different styles, you can get a more aggressive tone with these. The opto ones sometimes generally fatten up your tone a little bit more. I personally find I prefer an 76 type compression, but the Cali is way more expensive than the Ampeg, so I can see that. I would give both a go, give the Ampeg a go, and if it's not for you, maybe try the Cali. But they're very different, and you might be able to hear the Ampeg more, and you may like that or you may not like that, but it will have its own character. Hey Tyler, here we go. Sorry, I keep not doing this. Hey Tyler, have you done any mods to your basses, for example, a series parallel switch in a precision? I haven't. The fretless I was mentioning had the S1 switch, which I basically just always ran on, so I kind of made the jazz bass sound like a P bass, which I think is a little bit pointless. So I should have, I now really like P basses and play mostly P basses, who'd have thought. So I don't mod any of my basses really. I think, to be honest, I'm really fussy about what I buy, so I always only buy basses that I think have everything I need or want. There are some things I've thought of before. I've thought of doing kind of Fender Birds and Fender versions of other basses, so kind of putting Thunderbird pickups in a Fender, or putting Rickenbacker pickups in a Fender and doing it that way. But I've just never have done it really. I've not even switched out pickups, to be honest. But I just wouldn't buy a bass if I didn't like it beforehand, if you know what I mean. But I know a lot of people, that isn't always an option, and they want to just do something because they enjoy it and tweak it. But yeah, no, I haven't done it. Hey Don. Hey Davidson. Hi Tyler, what's the worst bass you ever played? Ooh, that's a tough question. Ooh, I don't really know. What was the worst bass I've ever played? I don't know. There's probably a lot of basses that I played that I thought were way too expensive for what they were. Basses that I thought... I do have a thing where I'll pick up a bass and know within a couple of seconds, playing a couple of notes, whether I like it or not. And there's probably been some that were quite expensive that I then put straight back down. One of the worst... Probably the worst value for money bass I ever owned was probably a Gibson Thunderbird. I love Gibson. I love Gibson basses in general. I think they're pretty cool and got a cool character. But yeah, I had this Thunderbird that I was desperate to have a Thunderbird because I thought it'd be cool, and I thought I really wasn't enjoying the band I was in, so I played this Thunderbird for a while and thought, oh yeah, I'll just play kind of root notes in it and enjoy it and just rock out in it. And I used it twice, maybe once on a recording and once live, and it was just uncomfortable. The neck was really small, and in a way that was kind of the worst bass I ever bought and then sold again very quickly. And I also managed to chip the front of it, so that's probably up there. I think I mentioned that bass last week as well. That bass really coming in for a bit of a time. Sorry, Thunderbird. But yeah, that would be probably... I can't think of the worst bass I've ever played though, because I probably wouldn't have played it for very long. I would have picked it up and put it back down. I have a P bass now. Sorry. Hey Catman, question. I have a P bass now, but I am getting more into slap. Should I get a jazz bass or I stick with a P? No, you should slap your P, because it's cool. And people hate it. They really don't like it. I don't know why. I love it. I love playing slap stuff on a P. I think it's really cool. Forget Me Nots by Patrice Rushen, then sampled to be the Men in Black theme tune. Freddie Washington on bass sounds killer. I love it. I love the sound of a slap P bass. It's just aggressive and punchy and doesn't sound like big scooped jazz bass sound, and I think that's cool. So I just do it. I have found when I go to do that in the studio, people hate me, and then I just have to get a jazz bass out because they don't like it. And they'll go, not quite right, and then you grab a jazz and then play it, and they go, oh yeah, that's the sound. So there is that element of it, but if you're not going to be in that situation, just play it on a P. I really enjoy it, and I'd actually prefer to do it. And I'll always try and play it on the P first, because Freddie Washington sounded great on that track, as I mentioned. Here we go. I'm going to stop after this question because it's been almost 45 minutes, which is an extra 15 minutes more than I said I would do. But I do enjoy you guys being here and chatting. Here we go. I think neural... That's not even a question, is it? No. I think neural DSP Cortex plus Boss Chromatic Tuner 2.3 are the only pedals you need. Does the DSP, neural DSP, not have a tuner built in? Because that is the only question I would ask, because I would just get rid of the tuner. You are probably right. I think, I mean, that's really where I've got to on the pedal front. I am just using the Line 6 HX Stomp, and I've got my floor, Helix floor as well. And that's all I really need. I can't think that I need more effects than that. to be honest, I think I might have mentioned it on the channel before, but if I had nothing else, I would just have the Line 6 Helix, no amps, nothing, and just use the Helix. If I had to get rid of every single thing, I'd keep my Sadowski PJ5 and probably the HX Stomp, and that would probably be able to do, I dare say, 100% of everything I need to do. Any gig I possibly need to do, all right there. Okay, I'm going to answer these last two questions because they are questions that are short. Warwick or Spectre? Controversial. I'm going to say Warwick. Sorry. To a lot of people, because I know that they are the Behringer in this situation, not literally, but they did steal the Spectre design. I've got Warwick Starbase that I really like. I had a Warwick Streamer that I liked. It was really comfortable to play. That was the unlined fretless. I just prefer the feel of a Warwick, and I know that's a little bit controversial. They can be, I think they can be a little bit not boring. They can lack character a little bit. They can be, there's something about a Fender that you get a bit of character from. It kind of feels old school and American. The Warwick seems very crisp and clear, and I think the problem is I've only played a couple of top end Spectres and a lot of the lesser Spectre stuff. I think on the lesser end I prefer the Warwick stuff. The good Spectre stuff it's great. They're good basses, but my experience of them, as I remember, I've not played many, so please don't jump at me in the comments, was them being quite heavy. So personally I would choose a Warwick. Wider range of choices, wider ranges of designs, and they're always well built, and the things like the adjuster nut, the bridge, they are well built, nice instruments. So that's that. From my perspective, I really like that I can show the comments. That really helps. 1 second. Stay hydrated. Too much talking. Do I use my Helix Live? If so, do you bother with cab sims? And do you set your own EQ on your amp flat? Do you use it with Aguilar head or just a power amp? Okay, so I think I did a video on this with my Helix Stomp last year. Just when I upgraded my whole rig to be ready to do fly gigs, which I did one of, and then have the versatility. So I upgraded the whole rig, and then all of our gigs were cancelled. So that was a bad move by me, really. But none of us knew. So I do use my Helix Live. The HX Stomp right in front of me here, I use pretty much on every live gig, no matter what it is, because it goes on this little nano pedal board I've got here. Oh, it's all plugged in, so I can't show you, but you've probably seen it in other videos if you've seen my videos before. So yes, I do use it live. Do I bother with cab sims? Depends what I'm doing. If it's going into the front of house, well, I'll talk about how I have it set up. The Helix Stomp I had set up for, sorry, pardon me. I had it set up for flying, so just going to a gig and having no amp at all. I have a version of it set up that plugs into the amp that's there, so I can hear myself on stage, but the signal is still going out to the front of house direct from the Helix, and I have another version of it set up to use just with an amp. So when it's just amp, I just get rid of all the effects, cab sim, all that stuff, get rid of the cab sim and the amp head, and use it as an effects pedal only, nothing else. When I am using it, flying with it, when that happened and we could do that and that was cool, I'd take it, I'd have the amp sim and the cab built in, because I don't necessarily want that DI sound on a stage. You want it to have a bit more of that amp character. So I think I had it set up, I know how I have it set up. I have it set up with the Aguilar 751 model in the Helix, and I then have IRs of my cab, which I have taken previously. I'm going to make some new ones of those, and kind of hopefully get them up on the Line 6 marketplace so people can buy them and do that kind of thing. But yeah, so I had basically my rig in the Helix replicated, and then the other version I had was to plug into the front of the amp, and at that point I didn't care. So if I was using someone else's amp flying, I'd just plug straight out of the Helix into there with the amp and cab sim, and then take one channel out to the front of house, because most of the time I'd hear myself through the monitors more than the amp and cab anyway, so I didn't really care what the amp and cab sounded like, so long as I could kind of hear bassy noises and hear the notes I was playing. I didn't really mind if there was kind of amp and cab sim going into amp and cab. That didn't matter to me. But yeah, personally, if I'm running it with my own amp, my own rig, my own setup, no cab sim, no amp sim, and just run it from the amp itself. But yeah, anytime I fly, anytime I play a gig somewhere else, I'm going to put both those on just to give it a bit more vibe. In the studio, maybe not. In the studio, I have both. I run a clean and then an amp affected sound. But yeah, that's the answer to that one. Hopefully that answered it for you. And then, good to see, my man. Good answer. Thank you. And then, does 405 take more brain capacity? Yes, that's my answer to that question. So there we go. That's all of the comments and questions. Thank you for tuning in. I will say, if you want to head over to my Instagram, I'm using my Instagram more and more. So all those questions about studio gear and stuff, I'm probably going to try and post more of that there. I will do a video on compression as asked, and I'll have a look back through the chat and just any other questions. But if there's a question you want answered, please do leave it in the comments below. If you're rewatching this video, leave your questions there and I will get to them in the next Q&A. I enjoy doing these live, so I'll do the next one live as well, probably. It's just more fun. And yeah, that's it really. Head over to the Instagram, hit subscribe if you haven't already, hit the like button if you haven't already, because that really helps this video get out to more people and helps more people see this video. And yes, I will see you in the next one. Haven't worked out what I'm going to post next week, but I'm working on it. So that will happen, and also there's going to be a tier list coming as well. So I will probably leave a little poll at some point for a tier list that we can do together in this live chat situation. But thank you for tuning in, everyone. Really enjoyed it, and I will see you soon.